Today I want to talk about something that most people might see as completely obvious, but there's quite a few details to it. And that's actually shooting from a mat. Obviously prone shooting, and I'm talking about shooting from a bipod, but it actually involves shooting from a bag or shooting from rests and that type of thing as well. But it's actually in using a mat, laying down in outdoor conditions, laying down using the likes of a mat. What you can see here is quite a normal setup for me, which you'll see me in some circumstances using this setup, which you can see here. What I'm talking about there is I've got the front legs of the bipod on the mat, and I've got a rear bag. I'll normally have the likes of my rest, but for this instance I'll just show just with a bag, just like most people are going to be shooting. Now all that might look normal like everyone does. I'm going to go through some of the details. Basically, bipod shooting, what you want in any of this sort of shooting is you want everything to not have spring in it. So it's actually sitting nice and stable, so that it's not bouncing, it's not sitting on stuff that's popping up and down. And as you can see, I can actually move the rifle backwards and forwards, and I'm getting no movement out of anything around it. The conditions that actually I'm using here, this particular mat has very thin. This part of the front of the actual mat is just thin canvas with some plastic on the back of it. This has been used a lot, which lets it grip to the ground nicely. There's no spring. If you come back into here, there's actually foam rubber inside this point, so it has spring inside it. What is not obvious is that essentially I've also on this mat, removed all the foam out of this section here. So there's no spring underneath this point. If I actually reposition this, put it over to here where there's normal foam in here, you'll see we've then, not much, but we've gained a little bit of spring out of the actual mat here. Now, if this was on grass, a grass cover, then we start to change the rules a little bit. I'll put it back to where we were, because then you'll find that all your spring, your mat side of things, with the foam rubber here and with the grass cover here, you'll end up with quite a bit of spring in the back where your rest is mounting, where your actual bag or bag base or whatever you're shooting is mounting. The other side of things is this is positioned where the front legs are on the mat. Quite commonly you'll see I prefer to be out here in the dirt where there's no mat underneath. I prefer to be right out there. The reason in these sort of circumstances, on this sort of ground, I wouldn't do that, is that you'll see that as I try and preload, it'll keep doing that. It'll keep walking forward on the dirt. Now, if that was different soil, if that was grass covered, so it's got strength in it, then I'll get the legs in the grass, and the grass actually gives it the grip. But being broken dirt like this is, that's why I actually come back into my mat. I make sure that I get it preloaded on there, and then the mat becomes the grip to stop it from travelling. But it is definitely down. If I put those legs, as you'll see some people shoot, they don't have this piece on the front here. They'll just have the foam rubber at the front edge of the mat, like this mat over here actually. So we'll go to a different mat. It's got nice foam rubber on it all around the place, so nice and comfortable to lay on. So that is not an uncommon. You can use this mat other way around. It's got a thinner side here, but for this example I want to show what some people are actually shooting with. This is a rifle bag made to be used as a mat as well. You've got nice bits to clip on stuff to be able to, in windy conditions, have your data books and everything all covered and zip tied down there, or your ammo or wherever it is down there, so it's nice and easy to use. And of course you can be shooting like this where you're out the front. Same problem which I'm describing. This foam rubber gives you this springy sensation down the back here. That is in perfect shooting form, with everything working really well and everything being really consistent, isn't going to cause a problem. But anything of those bits that isn't perfect, you get this spring out of the back of it. And as you'll see quite commonly, people want to keep everything off the dirt, or you've got broken loose dirt like we've got here, so you know it's going to move around. You want to get that grip, you put it back on your bag here, so it fixes the fact that you can push forward and get preload. But that there, And the truth of it is, you won't notice it generally shooting yourself. What you'll probably notice, if I was to set up and shoot here, and I could go through the experiment, but I'm not going to bother with it because I know the real result, is that essentially you would notice that your group is going to be larger. And whether it's an 1/8 group rifle and you're shooting 3/4 of an inch or half-inch group, or whether it's a half-inch rifle and you're shooting an 1.5 group, it'll just simply be larger. And that's because this response, this bounce out of, this is a nice wide bipod, it's a nice solid pack bag, but because of the ground being this springy stuff, is that everything is moving around. So for a normal dirt conditions, well, this bag here, sorry, this mat here, it does have the other end that has less foam rubber, but there's still a little bit of it going on. This mat here, nicer mat, and I'm not in the, this is a ridgeline mat. I'm not in the world of trying to say any one mat is better than the other. That's not what this is about. This is to try and describe what you should be looking for in a mat and how to use a mat. As you noticed, how I did have this set up, and with this would work properly, is I have modified this, but that does sit in there. I've removed all this, so I essentially have the same sort of thing here. There is essentially foam rubber to here, and you can actually see that line there. It's over here as well, where I've actually removed right back to here. This whole section has nothing but canvas there, so I end up with there's no bounce in it. Another feature that I do to try and make things work nicely, I obviously shoot generally off my bases. You notice on the base of them they have these 3 points which are sticking proud by 1/2 inch. That means even to most dirt you can get them to actually give even a stronger grip to the ground, because it is only those 3 points. They'll actually dig in. Now in some conditions, and people have asked also, can you get spikes for these? Because that's another way to do this. And the same you can run up the front, you can run spikes on things. So you actually sit the rifle, all its mounts, all its points are actually dug into the ground in a particular point to give you even more grip. I find that these spots here work quite well, and that makes it more flexible. There's essentially, the likes of spikes suit some ground and don't suit a lot of ground. So I'm trying to find that balance between a level of grip, but also a level that stops it from digging in too far and looser ground and things like that. And as I'm pointing out, in some cases, in this sort of broken dirt, I want the style of a mat that's going to let me still dig into the ground, but let me grip the ground with, so I can get this forward and back motion. You see that'll actually settle a little while until I actually get in behind the thing and actually settle down, and then I can actually preload properly without it moving. I'll also do, you'll see some other stuff where I'll have, where I've had to shoot with my big rifle, had to shoot where I was looking through the barrel, and had to run a more of a radial style or a closer style brake, which doesn't protect the dust from blowing up so much. So I had to run a whole big canvas thing under the front of the muzzle. I still got to the point where I could dig these in to the canvas, so I could actually get in these and dig through the canvas. So I'm doing the same sort of thing, which gives me that stability to actually give me proper preload on the bipod, but also is make sure it's dug down to the ground so I'm not getting any bounce or movement out of it. So anyway, like, it's just basically a conversation to go through the fact that not all mats are equal, and shooting with a mat is not a straightforward thing. And the truth of it is, if you can't get this stuff to be nice and stable, and your mat has too much bounce in it, you're better off to be laying on the ground and having your rifle bedded on the ground for your shooting side of things, and get a bit of dirt on things, than rather than being everything up and nice and protected and sitting on this stuff if it's springy. And like I said, that can also be even with just a nice thin canvas, but you're sitting on and laying on 1.5 inches of grass, you end up in the same place. So in that point, then, whether it's spikes or it's pulling that grass out with your hand, whatever it is, you want to make sure that both the support structures for your rifle are bedded. So essentially there isn't, I can't go and squish, probably with a lot of pressure I can make that move, but largely if you put normal pressure on there, normal cycle on it, that isn't then going to be bouncing up and down. I've also mentioned in saying that does take, you know, when in how you use a bag, I'll actually get them and I'll actually generally structure them, push them around and make sure they're settled for the first shot. So you haven't got a dozen shots of making things settle first. You make sure your bag's settled, you make sure it's settled to the ground, you make sure your bipod's settled, you make sure you can get preload on your bipod without things moving. Okay, so the basics of what I'm actually saying is that essentially in shooting with any platform, where, you know, and obviously I went through previously about shooting from a bench and things you to do to try and stabilise your bipod feet. The same for shooting with a mat, and obviously a mat is encompassing the ground, and it's the style of mat you've got. You know, I see all over the place, I see the likes of sponge rubber mats, which look nice and comfortable to lay on. They look pretty much like they're pretty durable for what they're doing with things. But if you look at it, you'll even watch some people as they cycle their bolt, you'll see the actual bipod feet bouncing around. You watch as they shoot and you'll see the back of the rifle butt down and push down on things and spring back up all the time. That is going to cause inconsistencies. So the main thing is you want everything bedded properly. You want to make sure that you've got your bag squished down. You want to make sure whether you've got just a bag or you're running a base, whatever it is, you know, whether it's spikes or whether it's pedestals or whether it's good firm ground, it is not going to spring up and down as it cycles backwards and forwards. You want to make sure that you've got your feet of your bipod gripped properly, so they're gripping down and they've got traction, so you can actually preload against the thing and it can move back without it skidding backwards and forwards. All those bits and pieces are part of what will really help you and change. In most cases, you're going to find an improvement. You know, whether that's a 1-inch group becomes a 1/2 inch group, or that's a 1/2 inch group becomes a 1/3 of an inch group. It is about making that consistent. So then all your shooting form, all that needs to be perfect. But essentially, if you're working with something that is not so flexible, it makes it a lot easier to get that hole in the hole group that you're after. Anyway, listen, I hope that's some help some people. It is certainly, like I said, it may seem clear, it may just be a little thing you lay on to keep the dirt off yourself, but there's actually quite a bit going on with your mat, and getting it working for you, or getting another one that does work for you, an important detail on shooting better. Anyway, thanks for checking us out, guys, and I hope that's of some help.